One of the reasons that we're here today is because HIV and AIDS have ravaged the community. That too many people have gotten sick, too many children have gotten sick. So one of the things that we're here in front of this band to do today is my wife and I are going to get tested for HIV/AIDS. Because if you know your status, then you can prevent illness. You can prevent passing it to your children and to your families, and we can make everybody have healthier, happier lives. So I just want everybody to remember that if a U.S. Senator from the United States can get tested, and his wife can get tested, then everybody in this crowd can get tested.
Medical news, a potentially fatal disease unknown just months ago is spreading so quickly that doctors now say it's a national epidemic. Tonight, George Strait has a Medical Watch report on this mysterious disease and what's being done to fight it.
For the last year, Phil Lanzarotto has been fighting for his life. A new and mysterious disease has virtually destroyed his body's natural defenses, his immune system, leaving him vulnerable to a bizarre assortment of rare and potentially deadly disorders, which in the last 12 months has hospitalized him 15 times.
The effect has been one of being, very weak and tired.
Phil Lanzarotto's problem is called acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS. Unknown 18 months ago, it has already claimed 636 victims, killing 261. 90% of the cases have turned up in New York and 6 other cities, but recently AIDS has appeared in 29 states. It is spreading at an alarming rate.
HIV/AIDS has puzzled modern science since its explosive arrival in the early 1980s, spawning fierce debates regarding its origin, spread, and tenacious adaptability. Not only is HIV/AIDS the newest unseen enemy opposing mankind, AIDS is a retelling of our deepest fears, prejudices, and the uniquely human desire to conquer the unknown.
The latest government figures now show nearly 7,000 known cases of AIDS in this country, and almost half of those who've contracted AIDS already have died from it. Having followed many of the individual cases, the Center for Disease Control also reports that the number of people with the disease is doubling every 6 months.
In fact, bathhouses nationwide are closing down. In San Francisco, the city has ordered them closed.
President Reagan said today that Rock Hudson would always be remembered for his humanity. And on hearing of his death, the House of Representatives agreed to double the amount of AIDS funds for research next year. There will now be $190 million.
There is, for a change, some encouraging news about AIDS. Word of a new treatment, and we emphasize treatment, with a new drug called AZT. When word got out today, AIDS hotlines across the country lit up. The World Health Organization reports today that the number of AIDS cases in the world jumped by 56% last year. More than 73,000 cases of AIDS have now been reported worldwide.
On the first day of school today, more than 150 mentally handicapped students arrived for class at Tampa's Manhattan Exceptional Center. But 7-year-old Eliana Martinez, who is also handicapped and has AIDS, had to stay home with her private tutor.
The reason Eliana isn't in school today is that a federal judge ruled the only way she could attend class would be to sit inside this 8 by 10 foot glass enclosure in the back of the room, isolated from the other students.
Conference delegates demonstrated their anger today, protesting the jailing of their Dutch colleague, Hans Verhoef, who has become a symbol of what the conference is about.
If we want to promote international solutions to the AIDS epidemic, which is what is needed, we can't do that by putting people in jail.
Verhoef was detained and jailed in Minnesota after immigration officials found he was carrying medicine indicating he had AIDS.
He was diagnosed with AIDS 5 years ago when he was 13. One of the first children known to have AIDS at that time. He spent the rest of his life fighting two invisible but powerful enemies, the virus inside him and the infectious fear and ignorance that surrounded him. Parents in Ryan's hometown of Russiaville, Indiana, tried to keep Ryan out of school. The courts ordered him admitted, but he had to use a separate bathroom, eat his lunch alone.
There was a lot of people who thought that if you breathe the same air, you could get AIDS.
18-year-old Ryan White, who struggled 5.5 years to overcome AIDS and prejudice, died early this morning of complications resulting from the disease.
In Sarasota, Florida today, a funeral for Ricky Ray. He's the 15-year-old boy whose family was burned out of its home in Arcadia, Florida, 5 years ago, after it was learned that Ricky and his brothers had tested positive for the AIDS virus. Expressions of sympathy today for Olympic diver Greg Louganis, who has disclosed that he has AIDS. But there is controversy, too, about whether Louganis should have disclosed he was HIV positive before the Olympic Games in South Korea. Good evening. We begin tonight with America and AIDS. The return of Magic Johnson to professional basketball this week has certainly pushed AIDS up on the agenda again.
Ritonavir is the most effective drug in a new class of AIDS drugs called protease inhibitors.
These drugs attacked a critical enzyme for HIV called protease, and without this enzyme, the virus is dead.
When combined with other drugs such as AZT, protease inhibitors are effective in treating AIDS patients who have become resistant to all other therapies. The new drugs work best if given during the early weeks of the infection, when the virus begins to overwhelm a person's immune system,
which passed to humans in the form of HIV-1. The most commonly accepted theory regarding the transmission origins of HIV/AIDS is the hunter theory. Even to this day, bushmeat hunting remains a steady behavior in the African subcontinent, despite ardent calls to end the practice due to high animal extinction rates and zoonotic disease transmission. As a result, the hunter theory postulates that simian immunodeficiency virus made a blood-to-blood transfer when humans butchered chimpanzees for food. Another theory set forth by journalist Edward Hooper in his book The River suggests that HIV can be traced to the testing of an oral polio vaccine called Chat, given to over 1 million people in the Belgian Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi in the late 1950s. It may also be a coincidence that AIDS first appeared in Africa at the same time that the World Health Organization was eradicating smallpox. During the 1970s, members of the World Health Organization were vaccinating people in Central Africa with a live smallpox vaccine, reusing needles 40 to 60 times without re-sterilization between patients. It is theorized that since live vaccines directly provoke the human immune system, HIV was awakened in humans from an otherwise dormant state. Another recent hypothesis is the colonialist or heart of darkness theory. Based in part on the hunter premise of viral transmission, the heart of darkness theory was first proposed in 2000 by Jim Moore, an American specialist in primate behavior, who published his findings in the Journal of AIDS Research and Human Retroviruses. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in areas such as French Equatorial Africa and the Belgian Congo, colonialist rule was particularly harsh, forcing many African men to live in labor camps where food and proper sanitation were scarce. Combined with physical exhaustion brought on by near-slave labor conditions, these factors may have set the stage for compromised immune systems and susceptibility to opportunistic pathogens such as HIV. Add to the mix a serendipitous meal of stray SIV-positive chimpanzee, and the transmission vector was complete.